Let's play this clip from Cam Newton, who actually says something that I think could be a hurdle for Tennessee in the very near future.
Yes, and here we go. It's a clip from Cam Newton talking about Arch Manning in Texas.
Texas,
I forgot to hit the sound.
Into the University of Texas with the understanding that they're trying to put Arch Manning in the best situation to be developed over time. It's not about playing. That's going to come. But who's going to develop this specific talent to be the best talent by the time he's eligible to go to the next level? A lot of these parents and a lot of these players get so jaded off of the fact that, hey, I'm trying to play early. No. Scratch that. Go somewhere that after 3 years, you could put yourself in a position to go to the league. That doesn't mean that I'm going somewhere where I could play early or start. Just because you're starting doesn't mean you're getting developed. I've always felt like I was more talented than Tim Tebow, but I needed Tim Tebow to show me what I lacked. Tim Tebow is an unbelievable leader, verbally and by actions. Arch would be a fool if he has not learned anything from Quinn Ewers, how he prepared, how he lead his team, and just how he handled and managed the expectations for being a quarterback at a university like Texas. The synonym for Heisman is hype. The player who has the most hype typically wins the Heisman. I don't think another quarterback has had this much hype at the University of Texas since the great Vince Young. You are a freaking fool if you don't think.
That's good. It came in. Of course, nobody's had the hype of Vince Young. I mean, since Vince Young, who's Arch Manning? That other than that, who's Texas had besides Arch Manning? I mean, they've had good players. Don't get me wrong, but Vince Young was a highly.
Well, Colt McCoy had a heck of a 4-year run there too at Texas.
He did, but he wasn't a hype guy. You know, you didn't go into the season thinking he's a Heisman finalist, did you?
Well, maybe his last year. Because remember, it was like Colt McCoy, Tim Tebow, Sam Bradford. And it was like, who's the best quarterback of those three? So
when did Cam Newton steal Andre 3000's identity? It looked like that. And you could tell he was at a Michelin conference talking to executives because he wore all blue and yellow. Did you notice that?
I didn't
Not
even
just
notice.
a Michelin jacket, but that's how these guys make $50,000 in a day. All right. How this helps Josh Heupel, which I'll get to, how it hurts him. One, if you're a quarterback, I think that players are going to start looking at ability to get me ready for the NFL more than anything else. I think it used to be under the table cash payments. Whereas now I think it's get me ready for the NFL because the money has leveled to somewhat. I think the top 20, 25 programs are going to spend about the same, whether it's the money that comes from the Congress hearing or whether it's the money that comes from NIL. I just think that there's going to be a leveling. That's how you're going to see teams separate and turn into a super conference, moving way down the path here. So I don't think that part helps. I don't think getting a quarterback, go Brendan Fraser if you want. I don't think that helps the offense that they run. I will say this, and this is a bigger factor. It's the culture. I mean, I just go back to my dealings with Jacob Warren, with Cooper Mays, and those weren't the only ones. I mean, I saw these guys at public functions. Caleb, I just firmly believe that the culture is in place. And does it end up paying off? You still got to get the 5-star defensive tackles, right?
Correct. You do.
Does it end up paying off? I don't know. But I would argue that Josh Heupel is ahead of the curve in this regard as far as building culture. And really, maybe he's not ahead of the curve. You know, that's like saying Jesus was ahead of the curve saying not to sin. I mean, you should do things the right way, right?
Right. Exactly. I do mostly agree with you, though. But we see this with Josh Heupel because there's things he focused on that help establish culture. Let's be honest. Rodney Garner was a hire for culture as much as anything else, right? He gets those defensive linemen to play together. They love each other. He's great for culture. I think a lot of what we think about in coaching is culture, and we kind of forget it. Now, look, when you're loaded up on talent, sometimes you don't have to establish culture. I'm sorry, but like people can say Nick Saban established culture. When you have that much talent, you don't need culture. You sleepwalk your way to a national title sometimes when you're that loaded. But
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think that 2001 Miami team had great culture. They didn't need it. They were so dominant over everybody else. I do think that culture, particularly if you can't get like the number one top tier talent, can be just enough to get you over the edge against certain teams. Look, let's talk about this. I mean, you've talked about this all the time. You wrote a book about it. The 98 team, the culture won the national title as much as anything they had talent-wise. Now, they had talent. Let's not pretend they didn't have talent. But, Dave, who's closer as a unit? The Bad Boy Pistons or the 98 Tennessee football team?
Repeat that question one more time. Let me mull on that. That's what I do when I need a second to think. Caleb caught me off guard.
Who was closer as a unit? Who was closer as a unit? The Bad Boy Pistons or the 98 Tennessee football team?
Yeah, I don't know what you're driving at, because I think the Pistons were us against the world, which formed a really good culture. Now, they were thugs and they did the Jordan rules where they knocked Michael around.
No, that's what I mean. They had an amazing culture.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Who was closer as a unit? Which team were the players closer as a unit to each other? I mean, I've always said the closest unit team of all time in the pros was the Bad Boy Pistons, because they had the all us against the wall mentality. They knew everybody hated them, and they fell in love with that image. The 98 team didn't have like a bad boy image, but they did have an us against the world mentality, and it made them extremely close.
You know, that Pistons team wins 5 championships for a guy named Larry Bird.
That Pistons team should have won 3. They got cheated against the Lakers in game 7.
All right, Dylan says culture can only get you so far. I don't know one elite football team that was full of Saints. I agree.
No one said that you have to have Saints to have a good culture, though.
I agree. Now, somebody else on our message board brought this up, and I thought that it was very apropos. No one knew Henden's name, referring to Hendon Hooker, before Heupel made him a Heisman contender. Well, I knew his name because I have the same last name. But there's a lot of truth to that. Now, I'm going to argue this, though, and I think it was Real Deal that put this. Todd put this in there. I believe in my heart of hearts that Hendon Hooker had a special touch on the deep ball. He was accurate everywhere, don't get me wrong. But I think it's 50-50 what Josh Heupel did, and it was a great fit for him able to drop dimes from 60 yards.
Oh, I am 100% agreeing. When we talk about culture, I mean, was the culture Heupel's culture or Hendon Hooker's culture? Did anybody establish a culture the way? I mean, Hendon Hooker really established that culture at Tennessee as much as anybody.
Yep.
And, you know, we basically can talk about Hendon Hooker. I think won over the team a lot. Look, I'm just going to say this. No one said this to me outright, but I've heard some things from things you've been told about the team. I know things Jimmy Hyams has been told. I've talked to some other reporters. I'm going to go ahead and make a leap based on the limited amount of evidence I have, this is my leap, Dave. I think Heupel would have been fired within 2 years had Joe Milton not gotten hurt in week 2 and Hendon Hooker didn't come in. Half of that reason is because Joe Milton wasn't as good as Hooker. The other half, I think Josh Heupel almost lost the team by naming Milton the starter over Hooker, because I think the team gravitated way more towards Hooker than Milton.
Okay, here's why I'm going to disagree with that, and it's Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Okay, here's why I'm going to go to the hilt and argue this point with you, which I think it's an interesting point. Joe Milton was such a player favorite. They all loved him. They probably knew deep down that the guy couldn't play as well as Hendon Hooker, but he was so well liked. You have to remember, under your scenario, you never see Hendon Hooker play that well in a game. So I'm going to disagree with you, but for a totally different reason.
I think Joe Milton became liked because of the way he accepted being a backup. I think when those two were practicing in fall camp before the 2021 season, I think Hendon Hooker was winning over the team, and I think the team wanted Hendon Hooker. And don't even discount this, Dave. You don't think some people took it? You don't think some people were a little bit annoyed that Josh Heupel went and got Joe Milton, who wasn't there for the spring and just obviously didn't have a fair competition and was going to name him the starter no matter what? You don't think that bothered a lot of people? And I mean, I think that it was very similar to me, Dave, to Ed Orgeron naming Brent Schaefer the starter before he even arrived on campus. And I think
I don't think it's that bad.
I don't.
Brent Schaefer attacked somebody with a bat.
It wasn't. No. Joe Milton's character is way higher than Brent Schaefer's.
Okay.
No, way higher. No, what I mean is, I think Ed Orgeron doomed himself at Ole Miss from the start because I think the team turned on him the minute he did something like that.
Will you help me with something?
Sure.
Does Ed Orgeron still have a national championship? That just doesn't seem right to me when I say
Yep.
Yep.
It
It doesn't sound right. To the message board, General Ursa says, you're right, Caleb. Heupel is going to live or die with Milton. Dylan brings up my point. To be fair, Joe passed the eye test the same as Nico. As a matter of fact, probably passed the eye test better. Great practice players, but just can't turn on when the lights come on.
I have enough, again, limited evidence that Hendon Hooker was outperforming Joe Milton in fall camp. But it was close. It was close. And Joe Milton was Heupel's guy.
Can I ask a question that maybe we need to save till tomorrow? Who
Sure.
would have been the better quarterback given 3 years in the system, Milton or Nico?
Nico. I mean, we can save it for tomorrow, but I would say Nico.
We're already done with it. Joe is just that.
I love Joe. I was the one sticking with and defending Joe staying the starter through the 2023 season because I knew that you had to keep the team together. But there was this was okay. You know what it would be like? We both have given Kalen DeBoer a break for Jalen Milroe last year, right?
Yes.
What would you say if Kalen DeBoer though went out of his way to sign Jalen Milroe and then was forced with him last year? Because that's what Josh Heupel did with Joe Milton.
No, that's fair. I can roll with that. But I do agree with you that I don't know if he'd been fired in 2 years, but he would have stuck with Joe Milton until Joe Milton broke a fibia. I mean, that guy was not going anywhere. He was locked in that position. And Hendon Hooker would have been a nobody. Isn't that crazy to think about?
Crazy. It's so crazy to think about. And instead, Hendon Hooker is one of the most beloved quarterbacks in Tennessee history. And I mean, we'll give Heupel the credit. He stuck with Hendon Hooker after Milton went down. I give him credit for doing that. I'm sure you've covered some coaches, Dave, who stubbornly stick with their quarterback no matter how bad they are during the season. Jeff Fisher. Oh, sorry. Anyways, that was a bad sneeze by me. Jeff Fisher can go to hell. I hate him. He ruined my Titans. But anyways,
Nice to me.
I'm sorry.
He's always nice to me.
He sabotaged Vince Young because he wanted Matt Leinart. Okay.
I'll tell you what. This is crazy. Random. I said Peyton Lewis was built like Jamal Lewis, but I've never stood next to a running back like Eddie Jordan.
Oh,
that guy had veins popping out of veins. I mean,
yes.
You talk about. I mean, he was jacked, and he was also a lot taller than anything. Go ahead. Sorry.
He's an odd dude too. Doesn't he have I think he shaves all his body because it makes him move quicker.
I didn't check.
Yeah, you didn't.
No, it was just a quick interview. It wasn't a big deal.
Now, Dave, let's get back to this for a second. The big thing I wanted to talk about specifically with the culture versus player development. I think culture is more important in general too for players and recruits because I think the NFL has loosened its demands for what players need to know when they go to the NFL. They are a lot more patient with players nowadays than they used to be, particularly quarterbacks.